You probably have heard this before. A dollar in the black community stays for about 6 hours. Contrast that to the Jewish community, where a dollar in their community stays for about a week before it leaves. And contrast that to the Asian community, where a dollar stays in their community for a month before leaving. Now, I want to be straight with you before we go any further. Some economists actually have tried to dispute this 6-hour methodology. They say it's an urban myth, but I will be debunking that shortly. So let's start with the numbers, because the numbers is where most people start to lie about this topic on both sides. The 6-hour stat comes from the Black Star Project study. It's been echoed by the Selig Center for Economic Growth. Compare that to roughly 19 days of circulation in the Jewish community and closer to a month in the Asian community. Now, William Spriggs, an economist who served under President Obama during his term, specifically for the Department of Labor, has publicly said the 6-hour figure is an urban myth. Now, he's an accredited economist holding a position formerly in the Department of Labor, saying that this methodology and the numbers behind it do not hold up to scrutiny. But there's another number that nobody talks about, not even the government talks about. Black Americans hold around $1.6 trillion in spending power, according to the Nielsen Spending Power Study. And by most estimates, only 2 or 3% of all that 1.6 trillion is spent on black-owned business. Now, whether the dollar leaves in 6 hours, 6 days, months, years, decades, centuries, the unacceptable part is that 97% of $1.6 trillion of spending power is being spent elsewhere, outside of the black community. It's not coming back to us, it's going to somebody else for their benefit, for their pocket, for their business. I think you can agree with me that this is a major problem. So what's the actual argument in fixing this? This is not a moral or even a political debate, even though people often try to frame it as such. It's a strategic one. Every dollar that stays inside the community and gets respent inside the community does 3 things at once. It funds jobs, it funds mentors, it also funds proof that the business model actually works, which makes the next bank, the next investor, the next partner willing to take a chance on that next black-owned, newly formed business. And that becomes a revolving door. But the only way we can make this strategy happen is if we act on it actively. We have to make a change. Nothing will change and nothing will happen positively for our community and for black businesses in this country as a whole if we keep moving through inaction on I hope so's and I wish it was this way. No, I understand that sometimes it is easier to go somewhere that is more accessible, that's more convenient. When that Publix or that CVS is right there available, or that Olive Garden or that specific nail salon you go to. These places that we always go to because it's easy, it's convenient, it's right there for the moment that we need it. But if we as a community are truly trying to strive for better, trying to do better things, to be empowered and powerful, to take a part in the same capitalism that has victimized us time and time again, and to gain not only the respect, but the financial and otherwise freedom that we deserve, we have to support each other by supporting black businesses predominantly, because that opens the door for more current and future entrepreneurs to gain the backing and the ability to create more businesses owned by us for our community, for the betterment of us, to gain some real respect and power amongst our communities. But then there's also a factor that I kind of left out that I need to speak upon, and it's kind of heavy, so buckle up. Sociologists Casey Hendricks and Dania Cheyenne Harvey wrote a piece called Black Dollars, White Pockets, Looting by Another Name, published in the Journal of Humanity and Society. The core idea is that wealth doesn't simply just leave the black community because people choose to shop in places that aren't black owned. It gets pulled out through institutional channels, predatory lending, redlining, municipal fines, and court fees disproportionately levied to Black communities. Their framing calls this looting by another name because this effect on a community's wealth is just another form of theft, even when it's done through the legal system instead of just your average crime. So now we see this structural mechanism at play that is holding us back from the infrastructure to the habit of the consumer. And leaving that part out, leaving out the truth, is a major flaw that's holding us back. We have to keep a spade a spade. Now, what I'm not saying is be a victim. I'm not saying blaming anybody is going to make anything better. I am simply naming the problem because you can't fix a gap that you don't know exists. Now we're going to ease off and we're going to deal with the direct pushback that this argument and this idea will receive. Because I would rather argue with you than pretend that the other side doesn't exist. The most common pushback you'll receive from most people is that Black-owned businesses charge sometimes a lot more money than standard businesses. And sometimes the quality isn't even making the math in order to equate to the price. And I'm not going to insult anyone's intelligence by saying that this is not true from time to time with some businesses. This is the truth. Some people have genuinely had not so great to pretty bad experiences. Let's not pretend like everything anybody does is good. But here is the deeper question that I would like to ask those people. Why does a gap exist in the first place? Historian Robert E. Weems Jr., who wrote Desegregating the Black Dollar, lays out something very important. Black-owned businesses spent most of the 20th century fighting for the same access to capital, advertising, and corporate partnership that other businesses got handed decades later. Less access to capital means higher costs per unit, less ability to scale, less margin for error if something goes wrong. This is what in the business world we would call an underinvestment, whether you look at it mathematically or not. Walking away just because there's a gap, because there's an infraction, because there's a unfair tipping of the scales for our community versus maybe others, by walking away, that only causes the cycle of disenfranchisement of our community to continue. But if we show up on purpose, even when it's not perfect, continuously trying to do better for each other and for us as a whole, as a community, as a collective, if we do that, that's the only thing that will fix this gap in our community and in any other. We have to reclaim our property, our solidarity, our exclusivity. As the Black community, we need to get all of these things back for us without having to depend on anybody else to save us, depending on anybody else to do things for us. We need to gain power, respect, and dominance through the one thing that everybody respects, the dollar. And I'm going to tell you the absolute truth as to why sometimes we do get mistreated, because a lot of the times respect is a downstream of resources. Communities with economic control and weight, they get listened to when they're not even in the room. Communities that don't have that same wealth, power, and weight, they get talked about and laughed at in those same rooms. And so I know what you're thinking. Dylan Allen's, you've been yapping, okay? You've been saying a lot of good, motivational, lofty stuff. That sounds very nice in theory, and maybe it could work on a big scale. But has this actually happened in any time in history? Can you prove when Black people have come together and built something that was successful as far as in an economic sense to help the benefit of the community? And to that answer, I would say, evidently, yes. It was called Black Wall Street. You've heard of it. Greenwood, Tulsa, Oklahoma. Black-owned banks, hotels, theaters, doctor's office, all inside of one neighborhood. By some accounts, the dollar in Greenwood circulated anywhere from 30 to 100 times before it ever left the community. The district did so well that two families there owned private planes in the 1910s and 20s. Private planes. But unfortunately, as the story goes, it was destroyed twice. The first time everybody knows about, it's the most talked about. destruction of the community. In 1921, the Tulsa Race Massacre, where, people who were prejudiced and didn't like that black people were doing something good for themselves without any help, aided by local police officers, burned down the entire town and district in less than 24 hours. But what fewer people often go into in depth was the second destruction. Now, Greenwood eventually got rebuilt, which a lot of people don't often acknowledge. And while it was doing good in the 1950s and 60s, the federal inter-highway state system was integrated by President Dwight D. Eisenhower. And unfortunately, these highways would bisect and intersect communities. And unfortunately for Greenwood, they would share the same fate as countless other communities. And a specific highway was routed straight through the rebuilt Greenwood, physically splitting it apart. Not by crime or by hate, but this time by concrete. So despite this horrible tragedy where people lost their lives, their livelihoods, our best example destroyed, this only proves that this is not a hypothetical. This is documented history. We've been shown that black people coming together, building their own thing, can work at the highest level to where the whole community grows. And it was dismantled only by forces outside of the community, not because the business model itself failed. And with more resources than the people in Greenwood ever could have wished or hoped to have, it's up to us for ourselves to improve and do just as good, if not better, than the people of Greenwood. So I've shown you the disparities, the arguments, the strategy in order to make this successful. So I've already proven that this can work even with documented history. So now I would assume your next question is, okay, Dylan, well, since you say Greenwood works and I looked it up in my spare time and it actually existed, why hasn't it been rebuilt? Why hasn't another community done the same thing as Greenwood? And I am not going to say that the answer is that we just don't care about each other. I would never say that. I think it's roughly three things that have held communities all over the United States amongst black people back from creating another Greenwood: trust, infrastructure, and habit. Trust, because decades of being burned by bad actors inside our community, exploiting us from outside and in. That makes people guarded and insecure on who to put faith in, who to put their money and trust in. Then infrastructure, because fewer black-owned banks and lenders means fewer black-owned businesses can even get off the ground in the first place. And habit, because convenience, apps, price comparisons from conglomerates versus black-owned businesses. All of these things default you to going to somewhere else other than a black business. They in fact put you on the least path of resistance. And most of the time, you're not even thinking about that. So now, finally, we have to look at what happens if we do close this obvious gap that we have, this issue, this problem that's holding us as a collective back. Well, there is a study on this. Stephen Rogers, no, not Captain America, out of Northwestern's Kellogg School of Business, studied something called the empowerment experiment. A family spent an entire year buying exclusively from black-owned businesses. His research suggests that if black spending with black businesses moved from around 3% to just 10%, it could create roughly 1 million new jobs. This doesn't just help black people, this helps everybody with more jobs, but especially it would help us in the black community. But if the gap stays there, it won't just stay flat. Less circulation means less generational wealth amongst our community. Fewer jobs created on the community's own terms means less leverage where decisions about the black community are actually made. A study out of Washington University Olin Business School, published in the American Economic Review, looked at what happened when Yelp added a black-owned business search label in 2020. Fairly recent. Black restaurants that used the label saw a 67% increase in online traffic. 67%. Not from a government program, not from a bailout, not from DEI, from consumers who opted in to find them on purpose. The researcher behind the study, Oren Reshef, called it a win-win-win. Consumers got what they actually wanted, and black suppliers increased sales, and Yelp did better. And most importantly, nobody needed to be forced to do anything. This was not DEI. People just had to be given the ability to act. That's it. And they were there and they showed up. This is and has never been just about shopping. This is about what thriving black businesses do in the community as a whole, and their importance, and to why we must invest in them as black people. They strengthen our community. Okay, some of these places will have people who will become mentors for the youth. They sponsor local events. They create spaces that previously may not have been there for organizations or otherwise. And when one succeeds, others follow. One storefront, one super successful storefront can cause revitalization in the community, causing another storefront to be successful, and another one, and another one. This attracts investment. This gives the next kid growing up in that neighborhood from doing something that could possibly negatively damage his life, something real to actually strive for, to something that's there, that's physical, that he can see and touch and interact with, be visible and possible. That is what we're actually voting for when we spend on purpose, with a purpose. So drop your comments right now. This week, this month, this year, did you spend your money with a black business on purpose? Simple yes or no, not I meant to, I tried, yes or no. Remember to subscribe, like, and comment. This is Dylan Analysis, signing out.